Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining our best practices panel. And we are going to be talking about the large-scale approaches to process safety management, looking at some of the challenges of achieving consistency across sites and in an international context. So to do that, I have a fantastic panel lineup for you. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Richard Eads. He is the head of process safety management EMEA for the Sherwin-Williams company, I think one of the world's biggest paints and coatings manufacturers. So welcome to Richard. We also have Whitney Jackson joining us from Chevron, and Whitney is part of the process safety management team there at Chevron. And then finally, we have Sajith Mohideen, who is at the Lafarge Holcim building materials and cement company. Again, another very large industrial player, and he's a global process safety manager. So welcome all to the best practices session. I would like to say as well, we are taking questions towards the end of this, and there will be one of the Slido polls during the panel. So maybe we can just kick off, Richard, with you, if you're able to just give a little bit of background in terms of your focus areas at Sherwin-Williams, and some of the challenges that you have, and the sort of solutions that you're applying to your process safety program.
Yeah, hi David, thanks very much. So yeah, I'm the, as you mentioned, I'm the head of process safety for the EMEA region in Sherwin-Williams. And with Sherwin-Williams being one of the biggest paint and coatings manufacturers, we handle quite a large volume of flammable materials in many sites across the world. And across the EMEA region, we have over 20 sites and over 100 sites across the world. And what we're trying to do from a process safety perspective is, as I work for the corporate team, trying to set the standard for PSM across all of those sites. And that's particularly challenging across many different cultures, different countries with many different languages. So we have to work to deliver that consistently and in a way which can be understood. One of the other challenges that we've got is the level of understanding of PSM across all of the sites varies greatly, with some sites, particularly those that have been developed from family-run businesses, and have grown and then have been acquired by the Sherwin-Williams company over the years, tend to come from very different starting points than what we see from many of the major chemical industry sites or petrochemicals or refinery operators, that type of thing. So PSM can be a very relatively new concept to many of the sites, and has been from since I joined and started looking at the sites in the region. So one of the things that we've had to do is implement PSM at a very basic level to start with, whilst meeting the legislative requirements, obviously, of each country as an absolute minimum, but also then driving that continuous improvement cycle within PSM to improve our process safety performance. So anything that we can do to standardize, we are doing, and that's across many of the elements. And a particular example of that is around management of change. So trying to get all of the sites, and succeeding now in getting all of the sites to identify change and what change is, which for many people who may be on this call may be a very simple concept to understand. But sometimes when knowledge has been limited previously, or the understanding isn't there, that can be quite difficult to implement. But also then providing a platform for that in terms of having a program that everybody can log into and it be the same format. And we do that through having an enterprise software that we have across all our sites.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. And I know when we were talking a few weeks ago about some of the key things you're working on, One of the things that I thought was very interesting that came up was around collaboration, and how you found, getting people from different functions, from maintenance, operations at EHS, to really sit down together and collaborate. And can you maybe expand a little bit on that? Because I think, this really goes to the thing about so many different people are really involved in doing PSM well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really three areas that we focused on for this, and one is, to start with, is the understanding around what PSM is. The second has been around documentation and what it takes to have effective documented process safety management systems, and what all the different documentation requirements are. Then also there's the physical aspect, and even down to the simple implementation of where people sit within the organisation and within the sites. So we're moving away from PSM is just an EHS function and is something that our EHS managers or our process safety engineers just deal with, to be something which is understood and taken on board by operations, engineering, maintenance, HR when required. So one of the ways in which we've helped the implementation of the improved process safety management on each of the sites is to have what we've called process safety teams, and looking at where those people are situated physically and having them located as close as possible to each other, but really such that they can have those day-to-day conversations, passing conversations about PSM, or the relevant topics where they cross over the functions, where we've implemented that, we've seen a lot more collaboration, much better communication between those people, rather than being at different ends of the site. Mm-hmm. And as well as that, providing them with areas where they can have meetings for PHAs, where they have access to printers, document files, where it's all brought together. So that's really helped in terms of implementing the PSM systems on the site.
I think that's fascinating, because it's always people, process, technology, and data, and that collaboration element in something as complex as PSM is critical. Well, thanks. Let's now go over to Whitney. So Whitney, I know when we spoke, quite a lot of different things came up in terms of looking at the role of quality engineering, the fact that when you look at major incidents, design is actually one of the top three causes, and also a lot of work you're doing around human performance as well. So maybe, people obviously be fascinated with Chevron being, one of the leading firms in the oil and gas market. Just to kind of get an overview of what you're focusing on, because I think it is definitely at the sophisticated end of what we've heard about in our research.
Right. So, yeah, I would say with Chevron, some of our greatest challenges is the diversity of our assets. So, like Sherwin-Williams, we're operating all over the world, but the complexity of our assets varies pretty greatly. So the challenges we have is making sure that our standards and processes actually work for everyone and that they fit all of the different types of assets. So one of the things that we've implemented within the last couple of years in our operating assets is the use of risk profiles. So rather than just trying to collect data from our PHAs and some of our other risk assessments in a looser way, we're trying to bring all of that information together to highlight the most significant risks that we have in each asset and make sure that the mitigations for those are maintained properly and that our business leaders are most aware of those. So within the last year, though, now we're implementing the use of risk profiles on projects as well. So that's the area that I work in, is in the design space for our major capital projects. And we were previously using integrated hazard identification workshops for identifying our most significant risks, but we see the value of the risk profiles as a project progresses to make sure that we're addressing those significant risks, and that some of them may drop off as we develop our design because we've either eliminated or reduced the risk such that it's no longer one of the most significant ones. But where it's not, maybe that's a red flag for us that we need to focus on more. But as you're talking about with our engineering and design space, one of the things that we've also done just this year is we've implemented an engineering contractor process safety assessment, so that when we're going out to bid for our engineering contractors, we're actually having them fill out an assessment, a self-assessment about their competency and capabilities in 9 different process safety focus areas, and providing us with evidence of the processes that they have to ensure that they meet Chevron's expectations and standards. And where they don't, then we work with them on bridging plans to make sure that they can mitigate some of those gaps. And the project team will work closely with them. So we've done this for some of our strategic contractors already, but we're implementing it now on some of our smaller non-strategic contractors, especially as Chevron moves into the non-giga project space, and we're moving down into just a major capital project space, to make sure that those contractors who maybe are not the largest in the industry can actually meet our standards, and we can work with them to bring them up to our standards as well. And then the other thing that we're doing is, as you said, investigating the human performance side of the engineering space. So looking at what are some of the systemic issues that we may have on our projects that could create an environment for design error. So is it staffing? Is it just the sheer volume of work that we're having people do? Is it the stress? We have a lot of expats who work on our projects, and being away from home, away from family, can create a lot of stress for people. Our project schedules are often very tight. So it is high stress environment, and we want to make sure that that's not influencing the quality of our design. So we're using some different tools to do that. We use learning teams, but we're also looking at personal narratives, and a tool that we're investigating right now called Safety Pulse and SenseMaker, where we can collect personal narratives about people's experience as they're doing their work, so that we can determine what it is that's causing them maybe to not be able to do the quality of engineering that they'd like to be doing. Is it that they have too much to do? Is it that they don't necessarily have the competency? Do they need more training? So those are the sorts of things that we're investigating now to improve our process safety performance.
Interesting, and certainly we have an active research theme around contractor safety and risk management, and you know, we're seeing organisations getting more and more focused on the individual worker as opposed to the contractor organisation as a whole. I mean, one of the other things that I think, you know, you're doing, which is, you know, others can learn from, is your digital transformation of HES.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thinking about that, you know, how far are you going down the road that Paul McCullough was just talking about, which is trying to have, you know, more real-time risk information, and therefore more insight into the controls and how they're performing? Is that, you know, are you doing that already at Chevron?
We are. We're growing in that space. We've implemented some digital solutions already. We are working on an HSE data lake so that we can collect all of the data from around the company for better analysis, and anyone can pull that data and work to analyze it so that they can filter and sort as they may need to determine applicability. We've also implemented electronic permit to work so that it's more real time as we have contractors in the field or our employees in the field. We're using HoloLens and augmented reality in the field as well, so that we can have the right expertise there without actually being there for our operators. But then on top of that, I think we're also looking at digital automated engineering tools as well, which I think is maybe a game changer. It could really speed up our processes. It could eliminate some of the opportunity for error that we have. So yeah, we're very, very focused on digital engineering solutions and operating solutions.
That's fascinating. Whitney, thank you very much. And we've already got a few questions coming in, which I will hold off on for the moment. So let's go over to Sajith. And I think, you know, what was interesting in our discussion is, again, we're hearing in the research that we're doing that quite a lot of organizations that are not kind of squarely in the process industries are, find they may have, you have some process hazards to deal with, which you do, but also just the whole, thought process and concepts of PSM can be really useful to have, better risk management. So yeah, it'd be great to hear what's happening at LafargeHolcim, because I know from the 400 attendees, there's many people on the call today who are not, in the process industries.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting, David, because LafargeHolcim, we are the world's largest cement producer. So, and traditionally, the cement plants are not really considered to be a high hazard, process industries, because, traditionally they used to build, use like traditional coal, but nowadays we are leaning towards more alternative fuels, where we are having more sort of, recycled fuel and solvents. So the hazard levels are creeping up. And not only that, the cement plants that were previously built were never built with the specification that we are going to use alternative fuel in the future. So, we've got to deal with operational issues, engineering issues, and that causes quite a significant amount of process safety issues. So having said that, the people on site do process safety without having to understand. They're currently doing it, but not many understand the concept of process safety, the way how we look at hazard and how you thought through different controls and how you can put barriers to prevent, hazard from becoming an event, and how do you maintain that barrier. And that concept is not quite there yet. So my time here so far been spent on having to create a new bespoke PSM standard, and having to standardize the way how we do the risk assessment, calibrate the risk across different sites, because as I said, we operate in almost every country. So having to calibrate the risks across, so then we can understand the risk profile in terms of how this works across our operation around the world. As well as we're looking at the insurance risk as well. So we're looking at, because we have insurance audit every 3 years, and there are a number of actions, corrective actions coming in place, and we are kind of combining them together and looking at it at the moment.
Interesting. And so, because I think many organizations are looking at this. I've certainly spoken with people saying waste and recycling, where they have a small number of process hazard issues, but someone's maybe moved from the chemical industry to a new role, and they say, well, wow, we could do a much better job here. So are you finding a lot of applicability for the kind of basic PSM concepts outside of let's say hazards that would be classically defined as process?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the core process what we do is the kiln, the rotary kiln. You have it's a giant kiln, and the temperature in excess of 1500 degrees C, and we have part of that. We have ammonia we store quite a lot of ammonia for NOx reductions, for emission purpose, and we have quite a big storage of fuel, both traditional fuels, diesel and coal. And typically you would have a coal mills in almost all the plants. So grinding operation on itself, it's one of our biggest hazards in process, because you're having a normal coal and you're going to grind it to make a pulverized coal. So in that operation is hazardous and typically comes under ATEX regulations in the Europe, and then around the world, the different regulations. So and then we have a solvent, again, alternative fuel. We store a lot of solvents, solid waste, dusty waste, pharmaceutical waste, where we have hazardous toxic material are stored. So yes, as you said, you are right, and we are increasingly moving into more of a hazardous industry.
Right. Interesting. Great. Well, listen, let's get the Slido poll fired up. So for those of you who haven't used this before, so you can access it on a mobile app, or else it will appear on the screen for you to fill out. And whilst we're waiting for that to happen and for people to respond, I can turn to some of the questions that are coming in. So this is part of our interactive approach here. So something for you, Whitney. So can you provide some examples of the expected process safety performance indicators of your engineering contractors?
I can. Let me actually think about, I'll pull something up for you. I'm not going to show you, but I'll pull it up so that we can see. So one of the things that one of the expectations is around their competency. We always want to make sure, of course, that our engineering contractors are providing experienced, skilled personnel to work on our projects. So that's one of the things that we're looking at from them. We also want to make sure that they have some standards and processes that they're planning to implement on the project, that they have quantitative risk assessment experience, that they have PHA experience, whether they have PHA facilitators. Those are some of the things that we're looking for from them. We are, of course, looking for their performance on past projects and whether they've had any incidents, but I can't really go into too many more details about what we have.
But I think that's good. That gives a real flavour of the range of topics and actually really getting into the skill set, you know, the commitment to training, etc. Okay, so thank you very much. That's great. And then one for you, Richard. So to what extent is Sherwin-Williams Company using digitization and connected technologies to improve PSM at the factory level?
Yeah, so much of what I focus on and support the sites with, as I mentioned, is their PSM implementation. But I work largely with the leadership team. So when it comes down to the floor and out in the production areas, at this stage it's limited in terms of what we're doing in terms of digital approaches. But there are some coming through, so we're starting to use digital asset management and there's one of our sites that are leading with a scanning technology for their assets and doing their condition monitoring based on scanning barcodes and inputting that information digitally. But in terms of the slightly higher level and looking at implementing management of change, for example, so we have every site now connected to our management of change software, and every site generates and manages their MOC documentation in a single system. So, and that system operates in exactly the same way for every site, which really helps with training, helps with communication and collaboration between teams on site and across regions, and also helps when we get involved as subject matter experts to review MOCs and help support those sites from a corporate level.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And maybe I could hand it over to, because I think what's interesting is we're sort of at different phases of sophistication or kind of maturity, aren't we? I mean, Whitney, at Chevron, do you see, you know, do you think it's feasible to have a single software provider for all PSM management, or is it more a case of kind of you get point solutions to deal with different, you know, aspects, like you have something for management of change, you have something for emergency notifications?
So I think Chevron's aim right now is to come up with basically an all-in-one solution, but the platform itself may look different between those applications. So the MOC application might look different from a risk recommendation management system, but potentially all through the same supplier and using cloud-based tools to do that. So where we can, it would be nice to have a single platform with just where the interface may look a bit different and it may be able to sort and use data in a different sort of way. But that is one of Chevron's objectives.
Okay, interesting. And I think certainly our research would indicate that historically you wouldn't have been able to find anyone who could do that for you. And it's only recently that through some kind of acquisitions and expansion of available technologies become possible. I mean, this is a general question. So Sajith, could you give your view? I mean, you're sort of coming in with a bit of a kind of, clean slate to work off. So how do you see the role of digital technology in supporting your standardization and efforts around PSM?
It is absolutely important at the moment, because we are really leaning on digital technology to standardize the approach. Because like I said, the geographical spread of our plants, we have over 2,300 sites across the world. So we are currently in the process of configuring. So we actually configured our incident management system, incident investigation, the KPIs, the reporting of the work hours and everything in one system. And then we are currently in the process of integrating PSM in the same system to be able to have a global dashboard, a live dashboard with certain KPIs that we can make certain decisions on. So having said that, we are using a Bowtie software as well as part of our approach, and it is again helped us to communicate some of the difficult concept in a slightly better way to our workers on the field. And we are trying now to utilize how we can utilize the Bowtie more digitally, more interactively, to be able to even use the training and do audit and to gather some more data on our critical control or critical barriers actually, so we can able to monitor some of the health of the critical barriers that we put in place.
That's really interesting. I'm sure Paul McCullough will be delighted to hear that, Sajith. So
I think his team is involved from Netherlands, so
okay.
I'm working with one of his team. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Great. Well, listen, let's just reflect on the Slido poll. So thank you for everyone who participated in the live poll. So the question was, and just reading it here, which process safety management initiative will your organization prioritize in 2021? And so joint leading responses, integrating data about asset health with data about worker safety, and moving to real-time risk monitoring. So it seems like people are hearing the message already from our next and best practices event. I mean, if I can pick up on the first one and get a comment from each of you, this is, we feel, the big prize that in terms of improving risk management that wasn't really realistic before, which is historically your asset health data, the performance of equipment, is it going to fail, was in one system, your maintenance data was in another system, and all the information about what workers are doing and where they are and so on is in another system. And so it was very hard for anyone to really get this together. And kind of going back to what Paul was talking about in terms of the context, it seems like people are now developing a vision where actually you can see how that's feasible. And that seems to be the response from the poll, that the idea that you can actually link those data sets up, and that would actually get better control over potential issues. Whitney, I mean, do you feel that is that one of the things you're trying to do at Chevron?
Yeah, I think so. We're really trying to link up our reliability and integrity data and information with our risk management information. So where we see certain requirements on our safeguards, especially from our risk management assessments, we want to make sure that those are included in our reliability and integrity programs. And where we might see performance slipping there, we have to reassess in our risk assessment what that might mean. So yeah, I think we're absolutely focused on it, and probably will be even more so coming into the next couple of years.
Interesting. And Richard, is that on your roadmap as well? Are you doing it already? Is it kind of prototype, or is it a bit more of a long-term vision?
Yeah, for us, that's probably a bit more of a longer-term vision. I think at this stage, we're working to get all of the sites on the same system for their asset management. having the critical equipment correctly identified, so linking that with PHAs and HAZOPs, where the equipment is relied upon for process safety purposes, and particularly for our SERVASO sites for major accident prevention. And then using the data from that to have our KPIs or our PSPIs from the asset management perspective. But it would certainly be something that that we're looking towards in the future to make that more real time. At the moment, we get where sites have implemented that, it's pretty close to near time. You can go in at any point and see where that data is up to, but that's often reliant on the information being entered from whatever inspections have been carried out, or condition monitoring that's being carried out, and the reports generated. So there is a little bit of a lag where we've implemented that, but certainly in the future we would like to close that and move more towards real time, and really only focus on those process safety control measures that we really depend upon to work.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So even if you're kind of not in a position to do it now, actually, it's clear that that's the way you want to get to it. And Sajith, is it easier where you don't have lots of existing systems, with dirty data in, to kind of go for a cloud, solution, or?
Not so much. I think in terms of, I hear what you're saying, but we are kind of in the piloting process at the moment. I'll tell you why, because these cement plants are quite big. When I say big, I mean they're asset intensive process, and we typically have anywhere from 200 to 500 people in any given plant. And what we're trying now to do, what we're piloting now, is we're integrating the SAP PM into our iCare system, which is the EHS system. So we have already identified the critical barriers or the critical controls that we have in our plant. Let's take a kiln, the burner system might be a critical control system, have a critical trip. So we already integrated the critical control in the SAP as a single entity with a certain flag. So I can run a SAP report on process safety critical control system and how that will be maintained. So I can look into, say, how many PMs, preventive maintenance work orders are overdue, how many of them were completed, or how many of them actually failed. For example, they did a trip testing and they failed in trip testing, so I'll be able to know that. So we're already integrating that, and we're already integrating that data into the country scorecard. So we have a system called country scorecard where we integrate a number of different KPIs to have one single number for each country that shows how healthy or how good that country is in safety.
Okay.
So we are in the process of that at the moment. So as I said, I'm piloting currently with our maintenance excellence team, corporate maintenance excellence teams, how the maintenance data into PSM. Having said that, we already integrated the asset integrity part, because it's already part of PSM, where we do two different levels of survey in the condition of the asset. I mean, I say physical asset, like concrete structures, steel structures, the silos, that kind of thing. So that's already been part of PSM. But it's not digitalized yet, and what I'm currently working on to digitalize that so that we can include that score in our country scorecard. Okay,
that's excellent. Well, listen, I'm afraid I've got so excited with everything that you're sharing here that we've overrun a little bit, but I think it was definitely worth it to hear about your digital strategies. So, can all the audience in your booths, wherever you are around the world, thank our three panelists: Whitney Jackson from Chevron, Richard Eade from the Sherwin-Williams Company, and Sajith Mohideen from LafargeHolcim. So thank you all very much indeed. And we will now take a short transition break, and then we will be firing up with our innovation presenters. So thank you all very much.